Well, we're glad that you're keeping it Citizen TV. We're now in the third hour, well into the third hour rather, of Citizen Extra. And before we get into our topic for this hour, which is election messaging and strategy, with which I have a panel in studio to discuss this, we cross over to Uhuru Park. And of course, this being the second week of the nurses strike, we are informed that nurses from all counties have gathered there, this being the 8th day. And they are planning to march to a yet unknown venue where they'll carry out a demo. They are saying that they will not return to work until their CBA is signed by the Council of Governors. Let's have a listen into some of those remarks that are being made as we speak at Uhuru Park.
Tunatangaza leo, tunawaambia hiyo pesa si ya nani? Hiyo pesa si ya nani? Hiyo pesa si ya nani? Hiyo pesa si ya mama yao. Kwa nini nasema hivyo? Nisikize. Kwa nini nasema hivyo? Hiyo pesa si ya mama yao, kwa sababu sisi ndio tunalipa ushuru. Hiyo pesa ni yetu. Mnasikia? Mnasikia? Kwa hivyo tunasema sahi, tukitoka hapa najua mahali mnataka kwenda, si ndio? Tunajua mahali mnataka kwenda. Na tunachelewa. Kwa hivyo namalizia hapo, nasema na asanteni sana. Aliyevalia kuongea ni katibu wetu. Kwa hivyo tunaelekea kumaliza muhadhara huu na baadaye tutaandamana hadi ambapo watatuelekeza, sivyo? Langu la mwisho ni hili: kama wauguzi nchini Kenya wote, na waziri kitu moja, tubakie nyumbani mwetu hadi pale tutapata CBA yetu imetiwa sahihi. Kurudi kazini wakati huu bila ya CBA itakuwa ni kujitia kitanzi. Kwa hivyo tubakie nyumbani mwetu zote hadi pale tutapata mwelekeo kutoka kwa union yetu, sawa sawa? Kwa hivyo nachukua fursa hii kumkaribisha mwenzangu ambaye ni MP aweze kumkaribisha katibu wetu, atueleze, alafu tuondoke tuelekee tutakapoenda, sawa? Kwa hivyo namkaribisha Total Man kutoka Rift Valley, atajitambulisha mwenyewe. Karibu bwana Biwot. Nurses oye! Nurses oye! Bwana asifiwe! Bwana asifiwe! Wauguzi oye! Wauguzi oye! Anayeongea ni Benson Biwot kutoka Elgeyo Marakwet County, Branch Secretary. Mungu aliangalia chini, akaona muuguzi, akaona kazi yake, akaona ni mzuri sana. Akaangalia payslip, akalia sana. Ndio tumekuja.
Live pictures there from Uhuru Park, where nurses from all counties have gathered, this being the 8th day of the nurses strike. They are marching to a yet-to-be-known venue, and our reporter on the ground there, Wilkista Nyabwa, will be giving us an update in regards to the nurses' agenda today. And bearing in mind the nurses have said they will not return to work until their CBA with the Council of Governors is signed. We'll be revisiting that story shortly. But to get into our topic of the hour, election messaging and strategy, I am joined by a panel in studio here today. Let me take you quickly through them. We're joined by Wangoi Kili, speech coach, lead speech reach from that particular organization. Derek Banga, CEO, public image, strategic communications, and image consultant. Together with Joe Otin, CEO, Collective Interactive Ad Agency, and Chairman, Advertising Standards Board. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. So to get straight into it, and I want to begin by posing to each of them a unique question. Maybe I'll start with Joe. Politics and advertising may seem like two different worlds, but some would say that they share certain principles, or they have certain principles in common. In both sectors, you take a product, you brand it in a certain way, and you hope that the public will buy into it or will purchase it. Joe, how would you respond to such a statement?
Well, I mean, advertising is the way to be able to create a connection between a brand, a product, a politician, and their constituents, you know, and their key target audiences that we want to sort of behave in a particular way towards the brand. They say that when you advertise, there are three things that you want to do. You want to change the way people think, the way they feel, and the way they act. So when it comes to politics, you know, that's really the crux of the matter. So we see that within politics that communications has to take up about 50% or even more of all the efforts that you put into your campaign, because if you don't communicate, you actually don't exist. And we saw Hillary Clinton, for example, spending about $332 million in her campaign in the U.S. She did get tremendous amounts of publicity. Donald Trump, on the other hand, he spent about 18.7 million USD.
My goodness, a
very big difference. But then the key thing was that Donald Trump got a lot more visibility because of his, you know, unusual and shocking remarks that helped him to control every news cycle. And as Hillary was generally shying away from the media, Trump was always in the front of the media, always in front of cameras, saying things that were absolutely outrageous, but creating the kind of content that people would want it to watch.
Joe, let me hold you on that, because we need to localize this first before we go out and look at what happened in America. And I want to start by taking a look at campaign messaging, and we can use Nairobi County as an example. Now, what we did yesterday, we went online to try and take a look at the YouTube channels of various candidates who are vying for the gubernatorial seats come August 8th. I looked for the YouTube channel of Governor Kidero. We could not find it. We looked for the YouTube channel of Peter Kenneth. We also could not find it. And if you're watching us and you know how we can access those channels, feel free to communicate with us. 22422 is our SMS line, or you can tweet us at Citizen TV Kenya. But we did find a YouTube channel of Mike Sonko and of Miguna Miguna, both of whom are running for the gubernatorial position in Nairobi County come August 8th. Let's see what they post on their platform. To begin with Mike Sonko, then Miguna Miguna, and come back to studio where we can continue to engage in regards to what we've just seen. Let's play those clips. Well, there you go. That clip posted on Mike Sonko TV, behind the scenes of TVC, that I'm sure we'll be seeing shortly. Derek, your thoughts? I'm sure you've seen that before. I'm sure it's not the first time that you're seeing this. Your thoughts on that sort of campaign using YouTube?
Yeah, thanks, Wahiga. And I mean, that's actually one of the avenues that politicians can use to certainly connect with a certain slice of the voters out there. So that was a behind-the-scenes look. It had some music. They were doing some, you know, some poses, obviously to connect with the youth. I think it is so important for people who are running for different seats to explore all of these aspects of social media. So absolutely, a YouTube channel, but we're even talking about using things like Periscope, Facebook Live. These days, this is where most of the eyeballs are, and you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not connecting, certainly with the young people, using all of these aspects of social media, other than just Twitter and maybe Facebook.
Wangoi, your comments about this, then of course your reaction to the fact that we couldn't find YouTube channels of certain candidates.
Okay, first let me comment on this. There's something that's clear about the two of them. You can see Igade really trying to fit into the streetwise sort of way with Sonko, and Sonko really trying to be formal in this sense. So here is what would have been interesting for me. Everyone is trying to sort of fit in. But what would have been interesting actually would have been maybe a live video of this going on, of them narrating, this is what we're doing, this is what's happening, this is the look and feel that we're having. What I see from there on, you may not agree with me, but it looks very unnatural. And you don't want that in a campaign where you're looking at two people that are running at the same level. You want to see cohesion, and you want to see chemistry.
You're not feeling their chemistry.
So you can't quite feel that. So on the YouTube channels missing, I think it's really sad, because we were just talking about personal communication and how candidates can actually leverage on their personal communication to sort of reach emotionally to the people that they are seeking votes from. So I would imagine, what if these YouTube channels would not be speeches from wherever it is that they have been, or maybe studio interviews, but it would be something much more personal, you know, an uncovering, a 1-minute uncovering of a value in their manifesto. I think that would be much more impactful. And I think, and this is sad, a lot of candidates this season seem to sort of be downplaying the power of personal communication, with social media now being very mainstream as we see it.
Great. Let's take a look at Miguna, what he posted on his YouTube channel. Of course, we picked the clip. We tried to steer away from the formal speeches, and so here he explains a bit of his manifesto. Let's have a listen to that.
For a transformed Nairobi County, a 5-year plan in bullet points, a manifesto for Nairobi. Salute. The majestic people of Nairobi, fellow Kenyans, our struggle should be not only to confront empire, but to lay siege to it, to deprive it of oxygen, to shame it, to mock it, with our arts, our music, our literature, our stubbornness, our joy.
Well, there we go. Here on Citizen TV, we strive to find balance, and for Miguna there, he chose a more formal approach in a way to send out his message to the public about what he hopes to achieve in Nairobi County should the electorate agree with him come the 8th of August. Joe Otin, you've seen both clips. Your comment?
Well, you know, having a YouTube channel is one thing. Having good content is another. And what we find in this market with politicians and with some brands is that they think that content is cheap. But to create good quality content requires a very deliberate effort and a substantial budget that would be able to create kind of content that would reach out and touch the hearts and minds of their constituents. So you're looking at a younger demographic. We know the youth are going to have a huge impact in voting in this this election, as they always have. So when you look at the content that we've just seen, you have to ask yourself that question, which is it passing on a relevant message to that younger demographic that is going to have an impact in the elections? And from what I'm seeing, I think there's a lot more that they can do.
What sort of advice would you give any candidate, aspirant, or even just someone who's not vying but is interested in this, in terms of branding as we get closer and closer to the election? What suggestions would you have, Joe?
Well, the first thing is you really have to understand your target audience. You have to have a deep insight into what it is that is relevant to them and what it is that moves them. And from that insight, you can then be able to develop scripts and content that can have an impact, touch their hearts and minds. Work with the professionals. That's all I would say. Don't try this at home, folks.
Derek, I want to engage you, but on something slightly different. Let me take you back to 2013. In 2013, Uhuru and Ruto, President Uhuru, Deputy President Ruto, of course, then as candidates, released a behind-the-scenes video of their adverts. But this time round, with about 56 days to the elections, we're seeing a slightly different campaign on their part. We're seeing more formal interviews by the president, where he's talking about what Jubilee has done, vis-a-vis what we saw in 2013, which was more playful. Let's play that 2013 video and then come back here and kind of find out why that change in strategy from what we saw Jubilee doing in 2013 and what we are beginning to see right now. If we can...
Exit, stand by, and action. Join me, Uhuru Kenyatta, and my brother William Ruto, and help us to take Kenya to the next stage.
again.
Together, okay, and action. Together we believe in Kenya. Synchronize it.
Well, for the benefit of our viewers, that was 2013. Derek, do we expect to see similar adverts like that in the build-up to the 2017 election?
Well, as you said it, Wahiga, I mean, I think this time round it's a little bit more formal. This time they are the incumbents, so they have to show a track record. This is simply part of their messaging. Show what you have achieved over the last 5 years. Show Kenyans, are their lives better than they were 5 years ago? And actually, that particular clip was a stark contrast to perhaps the type of leadership this country had been experiencing. And I think even around the world, there was sort of that wave of sort of young, fresh, sort of charismatic leadership round. This time round, I think the stakes are a little bit different. And so the message has to show what have we done, and this is why we deserve a chance to be put in power for another 5 years.
The IBC is showing through their records, of course, that a great number of a younger demographic have registered for this year's election. Should Uhuru and Ruto, President Uhuru, Deputy President Ruto, also consider trying to rope them in with other fun adverts, or this time that would be a mistake? I know I'm asking you the same question, but I'm trying to see, what about the younger demographic who might not buy into the serious and formal adverts and still desire some of those light-hearted moments?
Well, they need to use a combination of both. We just talked a few minutes ago about using different aspects of social media. And actually the government, or the Jubilee certainly party, is doing a good job of showing some of the accomplishments that they have done. So they need to be very smart about this. This is where the strategic communication or the strategic messaging comes in. So you have a mix of something that's a little bit more formal. But what I would like to see is a more personal engagement with the voters out there. A more personal engagement. You know, something akin to a fireside chat. I think we're having a discussion about that earlier. Something that's a little bit more personable so that I can relate a little bit better with those who are running for office.
Okay, almost as if you're sitting with them face to face, but of course via some sort of media platform.
Correct.
Right, well, let's take a look at what's happening on the NASA side. We haven't seen many adverts yet, but of course some would say it's still early, 56 days to go. We might see those as we get closer and closer to the elections. But what we have seen are songs and mantras. NASA Tibim, and a song with the same title that has been composed in their honor, in honor of the NASA coalition, NASA Brigade, with over 500,000 views on YouTube. We have a snippet of that, and then Wangui will be able to talk to us about the power of music and branding and communication of messages as well. Let's listen a bit to that song.
Raila TB, Chibi, Raila TB, Chibi, Kalonzo TB, Chibi, Kalonzo TB, Chibi, Wetangula TB, Chibi, Wetangula TB, Chibi, Mubama TB, Chibi, Mubama TB, Chibi, Dotianala, Dotianala, Orengo TB, Chibi, Orengo TB, Chibi, Kidero TB, Chibi, Kidero TB, Chibi, Suwaka TB, Chibi, Okyunya kwa niere, Jeradala. Amolodinga gik mitimo dongo, Amolodinga gik mitimo dongo, ikelo democracy.
Wangui, how important is music, and music that sells the agenda of a party in the build up to an election?
Okay, so this is what I love about jingles. They have they accord the message top of the mind awareness. So I'd not say much about the video, but I think the music is powerful, because all you think about is you know, TBM and Tialala, you know, and you associate that with NASA. I think music is powerful because it's easy to remember first, and it's fun. It's something that people can sort of engage in even as they're going about their sort of daily life. It's not something that you have to stop and do like you would maybe reading a manifesto. Music sort of just, you know, stays there, and you can listen to it as you're doing other things. I think it's powerful, and I have to say this. I think NASA are the team has some of the best ways or those strategies and tactics of using music in their campaigns. If you remember campaigns at least associated with Raila Odinga, they tend to be very music-filled, they're very colorful. I however have to say something about the video. I think they would have done a much better video than that one. As much as people have the views, I very much doubt that they are coming there because you know, it's ODM, it's because of you know, the optics that the video is providing. But music is powerful and useful in that case, and we have seen in cases, you know, like when they've done other jingles like Unbogable. I believe that was during Kibaki's time, and it was very much influenced by, you know, Raila's side of the campaign.
So yeah, you're giving the song a thumbs up, but the video,
the audio gets a thumbs up, the video
could be improved. Joe,
Joe,
let me get your comment about, you know, different ways of campaigning, some showing the lighter side, what we've seen with Mike Sonko Jubilee in 2013, others using music to excite the electorate, different strategies. Are they working? Do you feel that they will work this time around?
Well, I think every campaign needs to be dynamic in the way that it communicates. Because if you've got a serious message, maybe talking about, you know, children's health, or, you know, mothers and children, you know, mortality rates, then you may want to pass that message across with a relatively serious message. And with an authority, somebody who could speak on your behalf, come in and talk about that. When you have a message where you're trying to create an emotional connection with women, let's say the women voter, you'd want to do it in a particular way that would maybe highlight, you know, things to do with homemaking, for example, or to do with careers. You know, be able to connect with them from that perspective. When you're talking about the younger generation, you may want to have more of the music videos. And those music videos would then be able to communicate it in a particular way. But at the end of the day, it really is about storytelling. And you've got to be able to tell that story. And you know, videos of speeches and YouTube channels, people talking about their manifestos, you know, suited gentlemen, you know, in studios, you know, might tell one side of the story, but it's got to be a lot more.
Just briefly, is there an example, possibly not in Kenya but outside Kenya, of a candidate who sold a story that was so believable that they got the votes, they won because of that? Are you able to contextualize this for Kenyans?
Well, yes. I mean, there was you know, a campaign I saw for a governor's race in the U.S. where the negative campaign, the negative messages towards this particular candidate were that he had no experience. And so this candidate came in, shot a video of himself blindfolded, putting together an automatic weapon that had been dismantled. And when he finished it, he took off the blindfold and said, well, if you're talking about somebody who has experience in military and defense, you know, I'm your candidate. And that was such a strong and powerful way of being able to do, to express his expertise in a way that people will always remember. And of course, he did go ahead and win the election. Wow,
I must go and watch that clip on YouTube. You give me the link after this.
I certainly will.
Let's cross over to the last American election. And we can see, we saw a large number of negative adverts where the then Republican candidate, Donald Trump, and Democratic candidate, Hillary Clinton, took shots at each other on different platforms regarding different issues. Let's take a look. We've compiled some of the adverts that they took, negative adverts against each other. Let's have a look at them and then come back and take a look at whether that's something that could work in Kenya.
There's the Hillary standard, and then there's the standard for everybody else.
What's the Hillary standard?
Well,
you're against same-sex marriage, now you're for it. You defended President Obama's immigration policies, now you say they're too harsh. You supported his trade deal dozens of times. You even called it the gold standard. Now suddenly last week you're against it.
Unfounded, inaccurate, mean-spirited attacks with no basis in truth, reality.
What do you have to lose? You're living in poverty. Your schools are no good. You have no jobs. Look at my African American over here.
Trump management was charged with discriminating against African Americans and breaking federal law.
I have a great relationship with the blacks. I've always had a great relationship with the blacks.
What the hell do you have to lose?
I'm Hillary Clinton, and I approve this message.
done, we've compiled two adverts, one in which Donald Trump is being questioned about his views towards African Americans, President Donald Trump now, and one in which then Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton was being questioned about her turncoat politics, where she talks one thing, you know, in a previous month, and the next month she switches and endorses it, whereas previously she had been against that particular issue. Derek, have we seen anything like that in Africa, in Kenya, and should we expect to see that moving forward?
Well, I mean, for me, negative advertising, that's part and parcel, certainly, of campaigns in the West. If we're talking about this particular election cycle, that is something that I haven't seen, but I do expect to see it and to see some of these ads on our TV screens, hopefully really soon. You know, anytime you're running a sort of campaign, your messaging should have this, what I call a message box. So number one, you obviously are telling the voters out there the things that you can do or that you have accomplished. The second part is you are telling the voters out there why they shouldn't vote for your opponent. It's your competitive advantage, and that's where the negative messaging comes in. So I would expect to see a few more of those. Certainly, we've been talking about where content is king, where hopefully it's a little bit more sophisticated, and hopefully can capture clearly how that particular side is feeling.
If I may jump in there as well.
Go ahead, Joe.
I mean, what we've seen from, say, American elections and other elections around the world, in the more developed world, is you have almost 50% of your messaging is negative against your opponent, and the other 50% is positive for your campaign. And indeed, this is very commonplace in the U.S. I expect that we will see a little bit of that happening here. And it's really about the way they use that media to reach those key constituents, so those those target audiences, to be able to bring across those messages.
Yeah, especially the swing voters, I think, Joe, is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Wangui, let me pose a question to you that might be on the minds of many watching us. What's the difference between negative adverts and propaganda? Because what we've been seeing, especially during the nominations, we saw a lot of flyers on social media and messages that so-and-so has dropped out, so-and-so is supporting someone else, and when we sought those who were mentioned for clarification, they told us it's not true. So we did see a lot of propaganda, just not on TV, on social media, and thus it might be hard for someone to differentiate between negative ads paid for and propaganda.
Okay, so let me just answer your question and also leverage on what the two gentlemen have said. First, I think it would be a bit difficult to sort of look at the Trump-Hillary case without examining how we treat female political candidates during the campaign season, and it will bring me to now talk about what negative publicity is versus propaganda. So here is what I was listening to a couple of days ago. Female aspirants were talking about how during the campaign, actually during the nominations, their character is what was attacked. And let me just allude to the fact that for Hillary, even the character of Bill Clinton was attacked. I mean, she had nothing to do with what he did, his personal sins, but she has to pay for it on the campaign. And you'll find that a lot of female candidates will go through that. And so herein is where you're looking at negative publicity is what you called it, versus propaganda. So when it's negative, it really is, you're sort of looking at having to say nothing good about what the person has done. So it could be their development track record, and you can very easily attack that, or you can counter that. But when it comes to propaganda, I think that's sort of like putting the knife on someone's back and then turning it slowly and watching them bleed, because then you're attacking their character. You are attacking their children. And I mean, we've seen also with Donald Trump as president having his family, sort of attacked, his son attacked, and the character of his son attacked, as if his son has anything to do with the presidency. So those two are very efficient tools when used in political campaigns, but they do leave a bruising on the personal, I guess, identity of each of the candidates. I would say it is a no-no. I would say there are better tools to run a campaign. Of course, I mean, people would probably not agree with me, but it's possible to actually take a swipe at your opponent without necessarily attacking their character.
Wahida, if I can, jump in.
One at a time. Go ahead.
I don't think we can mention negative ads and propaganda without talking about fake news. Obviously, I think that's something that we're going to see, a proliferation of fake news. You know, these are clickbait sites where people go on and it's spread, you know, virally. It could be through a WhatsApp message. So I think also the electorate needs to be aware that, and they need to be able to do sort of their own fact-checking and not sort of believe every sort of story that comes out, especially if it's negative towards a particular opponent.
Before I let Joe jump in, Derek, how do you consume your media? When you see, you know, an article online, what sort of process do you go through in your mind before you believe it to be true and share it with others?
Well, I look at the track record of that particular journalist, for example. I look at the source. Is it a source from a credible news site? There are various things that I can do to determine whether that story is true or whether that story is false.
Okay.
Joe? And I was just going to go on and say that, you know, in business as in politics, if you don't craft your message, if you don't have a very clear message that you're sending out to your audiences, your opponents are going to craft it for you. And you certainly will not like what your opponents craft for you. So in marketing, we call it positioning. That you may have a very strong position, and if your opponent is smart enough, they can actually take a position that will reposition you and weaken your emotional connection with your target audiences. So the advice to the politicians is make sure you have a very strong message and know how this story is going to be evolve as you move towards the election.
Okay. Actually, sort of just pick up on that, Wahida, thank you, is to also, and I think Joe mentioned this earlier, is to actually understand who are you speaking to. I think we cannot underestimate the power of your audience, and it's easier now. It's easier to do campaigns now because people are speaking. You know, we're talking about social media not being new, but it's mainstream. So you really are privy as a politician to the conversations that people are having, whether it's on WhatsApp groups, whether it's on Facebook groups that you know, people sort of go to by association, whether it's through Twitter. You actually are privy to what conversation is going on, and then you have access to, you know, simple tools such as dipstick surveys, where you're able to sort of measure the temperature of what your audience is feeling, and then you can respond to that by crafting a message that really shows that you're actively listening to what their issues are.
Well, thank you so much, Wangui. I have so many questions regarding this topic, but unfortunately I am eating into the Kiswahili edition of Citizen Extra, so we'll have to call it that for now. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to have to bring this panel in the next few weeks. Hopefully we'll be seeing more activity when it comes to advertising from different political platforms on, when it comes to advertising from different political parties rather, on different platforms. I will now explore the difference between what we have now and what we'll have then as we get closer and closer to the elections. But that's all the time we have today on this English edition of Citizen Extra. My name is Wahiga Mwaura. Keep it Citizen TV. We'll be right back on the Kiswahili version.